Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good morning to everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, High Impact Publication Webinar Series 1, Science, Technology and Engineering Cluster. With the name of Allah, the most merciful and most gracious, we shall begin our session today with the recital of Kitab, Al-Fatiha. Amin ya Rabbal Alamin. To everyone who is watching us on Zoom and not to be forgotten, those of you who are watching us on YouTube Live, I wish you a good day. How are you doing? I hope everything is going well for you. Please keep safe and healthy. My name is Celine Ng, and I will be responsible for hosting today's event. Dear participants, Alhamdulillah, praise to Allah, we are able to gather in today's webinar, High Impact Publication Webinar Series 1. For your information, this is a series of webinar organized by Graduate Students Association, GSA, and Center for Graduate Studies, CGS, UTHM. In addition, these webinar series are divided into two clusters. First is Science, Technology and Engineering, STE. The second will be Social Science, Humanities and Education, SSHE. As for starting this webinar series is on Science, Technology and Engineering cluster. Before we begin, I would like to go through a few items that will require the participation of all participants. Please turn off your microphone while the speaker is presenting to reduce noise disruption for the smooth flow of the program. Following the speaker presentation, we will have a Q&A session for you to ask our speaker directly. However, you may submit questions in the chat box during the presentation, and we will address them during the Q&A session. Thank you for your cooperation. Dear participants, it is a great pleasure and honor to welcome today's speaker, Dr. Huda Majid from the University Tun Hussein of Malaysia. Allow me to introduce our speaker briefly. Dr. Huda is a senior lecturer at Faculty of Engineering Technology. He is the principal researcher at Industry Center of Excellence for Railway and affiliate researcher at Research Center for Applied Electromagnetics. In addition, Dr. Huda was appointed as editor-in-chief for Journal of Advanced Industrial Technology and Application, JITA. Dr. Huda is an expert researcher and lecturer in communication engineering, which specializes in antenna technology. His area of research interests include reconfigurable antennas and metamaterial structures. For your information, he has an H index of 20, which is really impressive. That's why Dr. Huda is the best choice for delivering the best methods that can be adopted in preparing research manuscripts that fulfill the requirement for high-impact journal publication, focusing for science, technology, and engineering cluster. We are able to collect participants' expectations and questions for today's webinar upon registration. So allow me to share a few of them. And also maybe Dr. Huda can briefly answer a few questions before we start the sharing session. So the participants will be very glad that they are able to gain guidelines and criteria on writing a good manuscript for high impact journal or Q1, Q2 publication. So Dr. Huda, is there any tips or tricks to improve the chances of publication acceptance, especially for high impact journal?
Assalamualaikum. Thank you, Celine. Basically, I will discuss it during the presentation. of the tips and strategies. Is it okay?
Okay. Okay, so never mind. Okay, doctor, is there how do you identify the legal scopus publication?
What is it? Can you repeat again?
Sure. How do you identify legal scopus publication?
Oh, for Scopus publication, basically you have to look into the Scopus website to see whether the journals is in Scopus or not. So it depends on the indexing. So usually high impacts publication, we refer to JCR, Journal Citation Report, under WOS.
Okay. So last question, doctor. They would like to know how to determine the scope and research novelties in the suitable high impact journal.
So basically, you have to do a lot of literature review, a recent literature review on, and then from there you can identify the research gap. So by doing that, you can have this novelty and easier for you to penetrate high impact journals.
Okay, so basically, literature review is very important for writing a good manuscript. Is that it,
Yes,
doctor?
yes, is it.
So so thank you, doctor, for your answer. Now, without further ado, I will hand over the session to Dr. Huda. Please welcome Dr. Huda.
Okay, thank you. I will share my slide first. So can you see my slide? Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay.
It's clear.
So I can start. Alhamdulillah. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. My name is Huda. So today I'm going to share with you my knowledge and experience in high impact publication. So basically, for this sharing session, I will share with you strategy tips on how to write high impact papers, manuscript, and also how to choose a suitable journal for your papers, inshallah. Okay, so I hope that this session will be santai-santai lah. If you have any question, feel free to ask. It's okay to ask during my presentation. Okay. So before I go to the main contents of the presentation, I'll just brief about my short bio lah. Okay, if you look at the slide, the figure is the profile is I got from Pablon and also Scopus. So I hope that all of you have research ID in WS and also Scopus. If you look at the I need to minimize this. Okay. If you look at the H index, it's different because even at the Google Scholar, the H index is different. In Google Scholar, my H index is 20, but in Scopus, it is 18. So basically, it depends on the paper that been indexed lah. For WS, it has less papers because it is a selective journal only that been indexed in WS. I think a pointer. Okay, so this is WS for science, much lower H index. So I did publish around 160. I'm not published, I'm author and also co-author of this 160 paper. Most of them collaborated from my student, from other universities, researchers from other universities. And I also active in reviewing papers. So right now I have reviewed 29 manuscript from WOS, mostly Q2 and Q3 manuscript. So these are the journals that I have been reviewed before. So usually every month I will get at least one request to review their paper. So I did gain a lot of knowledge just by reviewing papers, because you can see a lot of people, their techniques of writings and everything. And if you look at this graph here, this is my journey lah. My first publication is at 2007. 2007 basically, it's at my final year, undergraduate final year. So I did publish basically a co-authored paper, because I helped the senior during that time to do the measurement, and they include my names inside their papers. So basically, that's one of the way for you to obtain to increase your number of papers, and also achieve that by cooperating with other researchers. It's better for you to start during your study, during your master, your PhD. Try to collaborate with other students, your friends with same research interests, and by sharing papers, co-authored other papers, it's good for your what we call publication record lah. So basically, I did during my master. I did publish mostly in conference paper. That's why the citation is not that high. It's still 0 around here. But after in PhD, there's a policy that actually I got scholarship from the university, and I had to publish WS journal, ISI journal every year. So that's why I had this increase of citation. So basically, if you publish in WS, Web of Science, it has high impact to your publication. There's a lot of citation. So from there, the citation increase, and also Alhamdulillah, the papers also increase due to this. My students, thanks to my students, and also researchers, co-researchers from UTHM and other university, local and international. Okay. So this is just a brief on my bio. So let's start on the high impact publication lah. So why do you need publication? So basically, you need to have a motivation on writing papers. So writing papers is a what we call technical lah. It's not like you write a post in Facebook or Instagram, right? So you have to do critical thinking. If you look at the cognitive level, it goes to C5. So you need to evaluate, analyze. So it's use a lot of your brain to write a paper. So you need a motivation. So I think one of it is KPI lah, because if you look at your if you want to graduate master or PhD, you need to publish. So for master, I think 1 Scopus journal, and PhD 2 Scopus journal, if I'm not mistaken, in UTHM lah. So it depends on university. Others require WS journal for graduation, to graduate. So this is one of the motivation. So, but it is the second, if you look at this, is to build author record. This is basically during my postgraduate journey, this is basically my main motivation, because at that time, I'm not bonded with institution or company. So after PhD, I had to do job hunting. So I had to build my author's record. So that's why I published in high impact journal. I did publish during my PhD. I did publish on 2Q1 and another 2 paper in Q2 journal, WS journal. So this is my basically motivation, and Alhamdulillah, I did after my PhD. I got a postdoc for 1 year, 1.5 years, and then continue as a lecturer in UTHM, alhamdulillah. And also to increase your numbers of paper. So the numbers of paper, it is best to target high impact, which is Q1 or WS journal. Other than that is to guarantee intellectual properties of the scientific contribution. So basically, you do all your work, all the work that you done during your PhD and master. You need to basically claim it, kan? So that's by publishing, it's one of the way to claim that this is your work. And then other is maybe you can patent it, okay? And then fourth is to encourage scientists to share knowledge, and fifth, to help other researchers do further research on the published paper. So basically, this is one of the way for you to get citation. So citation is important because it reflects the H index of your record, author's record. So if you publish, there are further improvements, so people will cite it, and you get you can increase your H index. Okay. So this is the publication types. If you look at this, not only journal and proceeding, magazine is also one of the publication, letters, patent, book chapter. Even your thesis is also one of the publication. So right now we are targeting the first publication, which is the journal. So let's look into what's the different and advantage and disadvantage of journal and proceedings. So why why journal has a more impact than the proceeding. So if you look at the first point, advantage of conference paper, yes, of course, it takes short time for feedback, and then presenting the work done so far, and you can also interact with the international audience working in the same field. So I do love this, the third point here, why I still send my my work to proceeding, because you can what we call you can interact or meet people during the conference. This you can say before the COVID time, because before the COVID-19 pandemic. So you can basically you can meet your maybe your what we call Viva panel. If it's also possible, you can maybe what we call interact or meet your future employees during the conference. So that's why I go to conference. And then advantage of journal paper, frequently peer review. So you can submit your paper anytime, high impact compared to the proceeding. Yes, of course, journal has more impact factor compared with the proceeding. High quality paper with depth analysis. So usually journal paper has depth analysis compared to conference, because conference has a limited number of page compared to the journals, and useful feedback from the reviewer. So the last point here is very good. If you send to Q1 or Q2 journal, you will get a very good reviewer feedbacks. So this review feedback basically can be used to improve your papers and also your thesis. Okay, then even also the question might be asked by the Viva panel. And then drawback of the conference paper, some conference take whatever you send them if you participate in the event. Yes, of course, because conference, they want to collect, they have the, what we call, they have a target how many participants that send the papers to the conference, and because they want to take profit, and less feedback from reviewer, of course. Usually the comments is not that depth compared to the journal. Okay, and the drawback for the journal is it takes longer time for feedback lah. There are some journal that it takes 1 year to be published, even to be reviewed. Some of the journal, the review time might take 3 months, but there are some journal that only 1 or 2 months only. So you have to select the journal that you want to submit carefully. Okay. So let's look at the Scopus and WS indexing. So I hope that you know there are 2 types of indexing that the university look into, Scopus and also World of Science. So why we refer WS as high impact publication compared to the Scopus? Because first is WS is more selective, where less number of journal compared to the Scopus, and from there you will get more citation from the WS journal. So usually the WS journal will also been indexed in the Scopus indexing. So it's common, but there are also a few journals that it's indexed in WS but not in Scopus, but it's rarely been seen. So let's look into this link first. Oh, sorry. I cannot click. Okay. So I wanted to show you how you can, oh, sorry. Yeah, I want to show you my Google Scholar profile. So if you look at the citation here, I want to share with you the high the highest cited paper for my publication. So most of it is from WS, World of Science indexing. So for example, IEEE antenna and wireless propagation letter, I think this is during my PhD, this is Q1, but
Dr. Huda?
Yeah, yes, of course.
Sorry for interrupting. We can't see your screen actually.
Still okay. Okay, maybe because I'm sharing the slide. Okay, let me stop share and then share my screen. It's much better. Okay, can you see the Google Scholar? Okay, Google Scholar profile. So if you look at this, at the number of citation for my published paper, so most of the papers are indexed by WS, World of Science. For example, IEEE antennas and wireless propagation, right now I think it's in Q2. PM here, I think is still, last time is in Scopus, but now I think it's already in indexed by WS. I'm not sure what Q is this, but most of it is WS. Okay, so that's why it's best for you to publish your papers in WS for high impact. Okay, but there's also a rarely occasion where conference paper also has a high citation. It basically depends on your topic of your research. Some if you are do the topic on the trend, on the current trend, so you might get a high citation. And if you are the earliest a researcher that publish on that trend, on that topic. So you get high citation even you're published in conference. Okay. So let me change. Okay. So I hope that you're going to try to target on WS journal. So okay. So why publish in high impact journal? So we know that it's not an easy job to publish paper in a high impact factor. You need to go through a lot of pain and also a lot of criticization, right? So what's benefit? What's the benefit? So you will get a lot of readers, so means a lot of citation. Even it is helpful to get promoted. So I think if you're employee of research university, so they will target only Q1 and Q2 journals. You'll get incentive from your publication. I think so. Let me click it. So this is UTHM. So I think most of you already know about the incentive. So for Q1, you get 400. You can claim it to CGS. If I'm wrong, please correct me. So I think it started last year, 2020. So you can claim the incentive from publishing JWS and Scopus journal. Okay. So you also be famous at global level. So this if you publishing a breakthrough or novel technology. Okay. So this is a common type of paper that you can publish: original paper, letter, and review paper. So usually for letter, the rank for journal usually at Q3 and Q4. But let's look into the example of original paper. So this is my paper published in 2014. So this is published in FTP transaction on antenna and propagation. So it took me almost 1 year to publish this paper. A lot of review, I think 2 or 3 times review. So it takes 10 months to publish. But you can publish, basically for this, it's like one chapter of your thesis or your work. So we have around what we call, how many pages is it? So it's basically more than 4 pages. So these are, we call it full paper. So you do intense literature review, and then you discuss the details on your project, the whole projects. Okay. For example, for me, antenna. So I discuss this antenna, detail of this whole antenna in this one paper. And then let's look at the letter. So letter, for example, this is journal for published in 2013 in IEEE antennas and wireless propagation letter. So if you look at the page here, it's only 3 pages. So usually letter, you have to publish less than 4 pages, sometimes 2 pages only. It's quite hard to write in a letter because you have limited pages and you want to compress it, compress the detail inside it. So it's a bit hard. Okay, usually for letter you have to straight to the point. What's your contribution? What's your design? And what's the main result that you want to show? So that's it. Because it has limited numbers of pages. And review paper, you can publish in Q1 to Q4 journals. It depends. So for review paper, this is one example just published last year, I think, by Dr. Najib. If you look at this, the page is around 30 pages and the reference up to 106. So review paper usually have to do a lot of literature review, intense literature review. And you need to make sure that your topic here is very specific, and it's not already been published by other researchers. Okay. Okay, let's look into how we want to select journal. So first, we need to look at the impact factor. So for JCR or WS, let me show you. I'm not sure whether you know how to go to the JCR from the library or not. So I'll show you how step by step. From the library, you need to use VPN to go to the JCR. Internet is a bit slow. You can go to e-resources. Then understand to log into VPN if you are at home. But if you are using UTHM network, I think you just straight away go to the database. So you go to the database. And then from here, you go to this website or GCR, Clever Analytics. It's quite slow. I think I'll continue my slide. Maybe we can continue on the GCR, how we can look at the rank, what is the rank, what is the impact factor in the GCR after this. Okay. So the second point is you also need to know the disciplinary of the journals. So for first time submission for a journal that your friend or your colleague has never submitted before, you need to read the scope of the journal. So there will be multidisciplinary journal and also specialized journals. I prefer specialized journals here because you can get more reader and more citation from it compared to the multidisciplinary journals. Okay, and then we have after that you need to examine the several articles in the journals before you submit it. Make sure that the article in the journal might have a similar topic, for example, antenna topic. So you check in the journal whether they have published articles on antenna or not. So if there's a publication on antenna topic, so there's a good chance for you to submit to that journal and will be reviewed lah. Or else maybe the editor will reject it in day one. And then you also need to know the accessibility of the journal. Is it open access or subscription based? If you have an open access, you have more citation because everyone can download it compared to the subscribe base. Okay. So another thing that you need to know is review speed or lead time. So some of the journal might take 1 year for review process and until publication. So you need to consider this because you don't have, for example, for master student, you only have 2 years to publish, right? So you need to find a journal that has fast publication review speed. And also the article processing charge, APC. So most of the article has APC. So you need to know how much you need to pay. Okay, so if it's corpus, it might be around 1,000 ringgit. But for WS, it might goes up more than 2,000 or 3,000 ringgit, Malaysia. So you have to look into it and find funding to pay the journal APC. So most of the publisher only charge APC here if you choose open access. If it's subscription based, usually it will be free lah. You can publish in the journal free. So most of it, Xavier, Sailor Francis, most of it do this kind of what you can choose lah, open access or subscription based. Okay. So this is a key point on selecting journal rank. You need to, if you have a higher rank Q1, so it has higher impact factor, which means you can get higher citation, publishing date. Some of although you have you already finished you already been accepted to be published. There are certain journals that are going to publish your article next year. So you have to look into it because usually we are looking at the publishing date. Okay. And then the audience, of course, is it you're going to submit in the specialized journal or maybe on the multidisciplinary journal. So you have to look at the audience and also the review speed, as I said before. Okay. So this is few known publishers and societies that we can submit our journals. So this top 4 here and Hindawi here is the publisher, known publisher that have a lot of journal that we can submit. And IEEE and IET is a society and they also accept journal publication. For electrical and electronic, we usually try to submit to IEEE because we can get a lot of citation from IEEE journals. So we're going for the preparation to write. I'm going to discuss on the tips and strategy for preparing to writing, and also submitting your paper. Before that, I want to check whether the website is still okay. There's a problem with the internet, so I cannot show you the JCR. Let's continue with the slide. So, okay, before that, I will briefly show to you the manuscript flow. So, after you submit your paper to a journal, so the editor will check it first whether your journal is in scope or not in scope with the journal or not. So, what happens if it's not in the scope of the journal? The editor will reject it automatically. Earlier, the editor will not send it to the reviewer. So that's why if you submit a journal and next day it is being rejected, it means that you're submitting to a wrong journal. So don't be sad or anything. Just find another journal that that fits in your research topic, which means that in your scope lah. Okay, in the scope of the journal. So that's why selecting journal is the first step before you submitting. So make sure the scope of the journal is within your research paper topic. And then after the editor approve that the paper is in the scope, so they will send it to the referee. So the referee is the reviewer. So minimum usually 2, you can go up to 3 and 4 referees, reviewer. And we will go to review process. It's either accepted, rejected, or conditionally accepted, means that you need to do the revision. Okay. So most of the people will go through this process revision. So we get minor revision and major revision. So we need to respond accordingly, or else it might get rejected. So if you get a minor revision or major revision, basically you have one of your feet is already inside the journal publication. So you need to respond the reviewer comments properly. And then after that, if it's accepted by the reviewer, you go to the text edit and then publish. So some of the journal we publish earlier using the DOI, even though the publishing date might be next year. But I think it's okay as long as you have a DOI number, people can cite it. Okay. This is the manuscript flow. Okay. And then you need to know your contents to publish in high impacts journals. So you need to ask yourself, does my research present new original result or method, new design or interpretation to already published result, new review or particular subject or field, examine or refine existing published data. So if you have one of this question, yes, means that you can submit it to a high impact journal. Okay, so make sure you have this answered first before you want to submit to a journal. Okay.
Doctor?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I think there's a participant who raised his hand. Maybe he want to ask question for you.
Okay. Please feel free to ask. Who is it?
Okay, hold on, please. He's connecting with his audio.
Okay.
Mr. Ubali.
Yes, Mr. Ubali.
Mr. Ubali, you may ask your question to Dr. Huda.
I think he has a problem. Has a technical problem. So I'll just continue my presentation. Okay. Sure. I think if you have a technical problem in your mic or speaker, you can just drop your question in the chat. So maybe at the Q&A, I can try to answer it. Okay. Hello. Okay, let's continue with the slides. So preparing to write. So first you need to follow the journal formats. So make sure you download the template and then write your paper in their journal formats. Okay, and then for the tips for author, for me it's better. I suggest that you include reputable authors inside your papers. So by doing that, reputable author means that for example, the author is from well-known or in the QS rank university, that people will know that this is from a good university, a higher rank university. So for my experience as a reviewer, the thing that I look into other than the contents of the paper is the authors. Because usually for the journals, they will do blind review where the reviewer can see or knows who is the authors of the papers. So I usually look at the authors and also their institution from where. So if you have if you have a if the author is from well-known university, maybe from the UK, so it's a bit what we call for the review. I think is what we call it. It gives what we call macam mana ya cakap mudah lah, bagi mudah itulah sebab because they are well known from the well-known university. Okay. Okay, for the title, try to use fewest possible word that can adequately describe the contents of paper. So try to use less word, because if you have a long title, it's quite hard for the reviewer to understand what actually you want to do in your research work. Okay. And then contain keyword that reflect the contents. Okay, concise and specific. And also keyword increase chance to be cited. So you have also need to know what what you put inside the title, because the title will be what if you search in a journal, so basically it will search based on your title. So that's why it will increase the chance to be cited if you have a good keyword inside your title. Okay. And then after that is abstract. It's a short summary of your manuscript. It should consist of your objective and scope. So it means that first you have to just straightforward what are you going to discuss in this paper, the objective and the scope of your research in your paper. And then try to explain the method or the experiment, and then the findings. And lastly, you can add the novelty or the originality. You can say it's also, you can add the application inside the abstract from your research, what exactly it contribute to the field, what it contribute to the knowledge of the topic. Okay, should be clear and concise, and I suggest that you do proofread. So for proofread, I usually, because it's quite expensive to proofread, it usually count by words. So usually I send abstract and introduction and conclusion only to proofreader to be proofread. So it will give you less cost, because usually for review they will read the abstract and conclusion first. So if there's no grammatical error, it will give you good impression to the reviewer. And then next will be the introduction. You also need to do some proofing on the introduction, because introduction is including the literature review, your research gap, and also your objective of your research paper. Okay. And usually abstract is written after the completion of the papers. So this, you have to keep the abstract at the end of the writing. Okay. So This general criteria for the abstract is one paragraph, should be no citation inside the abstract, and should be less than 300 words. It cannot be too long. Okay, so it means that in what the author can read fast about, and know about what your research from the abstract. Okay, so introduction. For introduction, if you look into the organization of the research paper, you will start with abstract, introduction, and then your experimental. And after your experimental, you do there will be a result and discussion chapter, and lastly conclusion, and of course there's a reference. So we will go to each chapter to this for my presentation. Okay. So for introduction, you have to brief literature, do brief literature review on the topic. So you need to highlight what is the research gap that you want to from the literature review. So sometimes, basically, for the research gap, you need to have a correlation with the literature review. That means that you only insert papers, reference that are related to the research gap. You don't put any paper, you cannot put any paper that are not related. For example, you want to solve what we call a for example, antenna. You want to have you have a compact antenna at maybe at 1 gigahertz frequency. So from there, you should refer or do the literature review on the antenna that is larger at 1 gigahertz, and the research gap is basically, you can say that the antenna, the most of the published antenna has a large footprints. So to do that, you propose a smaller antenna with miniature size, so something like that. Okay. Maybe I can show you one of the paper, how to basically write a introduction. So this is a letter, so it will be a short introduction. So first you can start with the general statement, and then you can straight away go to the literature review to cite the reference, and then from the reference 1 to 9, you can say there's a research gap where most of the antenna, if you look at this, most of the antenna is a single type antenna. So by combining two antennas into one structure is new. So this can benefit into extra function inherent from each antenna, such as frequency or radiation pattern property. So basically, from this point here is the research gap, because you did a literature review from this reference, and you find out there's a gap where most of it is single antenna. There's no combination of antenna. Okay, so then you go to the objective. Therefore, in this letter, what you did, you have to write it down over here. So this is just an example how you write a introduction. So make sure you have these three elements. Okay. And then state application if possible. If there's an application for your research, it's best to state it. So this is the main paragraph or parts that you need to have in the introduction that I explained before. So general introduction with literature review or past study, and then you need to highlight the research gap, problem statement, and then you highlight the objective of your research paper, what you're going to present in this paper. Okay. So this is a common problem that I found during as a reviewer. So that most of it is not a latest literature. So you need to have a latest literature or reference. So usually more than less than 10 years, but if possible, less than 5 years lah, reference. And clear problem statement. So research gap, some of the papers has no research gap. So then they just explain the literature review and then jump away straight to the objective without any research gap or problem statement. So you need to have a problem statement to strengthen your research paper. Okay. It's the same as you write your thesis lah. You need to have a problem statement. But for this problem statement, you need to compact it, make it concise in 1 or 2 sentences. Lengthy and focused review of previous research. This is what I said before. The previous research or the literature review need to be focused on the research gap lah, or in the problem statement. And please avoid refer to textbook, website. So we need to refer it to reputable journals. Even proceeding, try to avoid it. So try to refer to WS journals. Okay. So we go to after introduction, we have the experimental. So in this chapter, usually you design you discuss your design or method or anything that your experimental. So you need to explain it in detail so that it can be replicable or repeatable. So each dimension, if you have an antenna design, you need to mention you need to state the dimension of the antenna, what material you are using, even the impedance you need to explain in detail so that other researchers that are going to refer to your paper can replicate it back. Means that they can simulate it back or maybe fabricate and do the testing again. Okay. So start with explanation of the design or flowchart, detail and complete parameters like I said before. You also need to mention the software that you use, the hardware that you use, even the model itself. You also need to state it inside the paper. So avoid citation in the experimental. So if you have a lot of citation in the experimental chapter, it's not good. It gives negative perception as if you are copying someone's work. Okay, so you can have a citation or reference inside there, but try to minimize it. So for material in this chapter, you need to identify experimental chemical or materials or animals, anything. So accurately identify, clear state sample. For chemical, provide exact technical specification. So for chemical or civil engineering, so you need to specifically state the method, maybe the source or technical, or maybe the method of preparation. So if there's a method in the experimental chapter, you need to clear, precise, and concise. You need to do it in clear, precise, and concise. So if the method has been previously published, only the reference should be given with short identification. So maybe you can state the equation, and then straight away where actually you get the equation from. Okay. So the common problem in this chapter, experimental chapter, is not enough info that experiment can be repeated. So you need to detail out all of your experimental design or method. and mix with the result. So it should be avoided. So for this chapter, you need to focus on your design or method, and you need to separate it from the result, because the result is in another chapter. If you need to do to create a subchapter, please do it. So it will be much easier for the reviewer to read it. So some in my experience as a reviewer, I did also review some paper that has poor organization, even though the work is good. So it gave me a hard time to review it. So please let the reviewer have a good time to review the paper, and you might get lucky. They will give you minor correction or maybe accepted. Okay. So let's go to the result and discussion chapter. So we need to use graph and table in this chapter. Okay. So don't write your result in text, but use graph, tables. So and then figures and table, you need to, the number should be accordingly lah, not too many, because some of the people that I do, there's a lot of figure which is hard for me to review. Okay. And also highlight key finding, not repeated, explain again the figure and table. So for the figure, you need to explain it in text. Usually we analyze the figure in text. Explanation is concise and informative, support your hypothesis, not to overstate the importance of your research finding. So let's look into the difference between analysis and discussion. So analysis is basically the data, numbers, or behavior pattern that cannot be interpreted from the graph. So you have a graph. So there's a info that you need to interpret it. So that we call analysis. And discussion is different. Discussion is basically you explain what do your result mean. So from the analysis, what it means from there, and then how they relate to the literature review. So you can do comparison between your work and with your and other previous research, and point out any lack of correlation. So how to write a result? This is basically a core of the paper. You need to write it clearly and simply written, so it will be easier for the reviewer to read and reader also. Simplify figure and table. Do not repeat statement from the experiment. So if you have, it is best to write a statement based on the figure and table, and don't repeat it. So for how to present your data, there are three methods: direct in word, figures, and table. Like I mentioned it before, but I prefer you did it in figures or in table. And then analysis, you can do the analysis by directly in the text. Okay. And also you need to remember that all figures and table must be accompanied by text explanation. So the figure should be clear and easy to read. So if you have multiple data in one figure and it's hard to read, you can ask your friend to look at your figure whether they can understand it or not. If your friend cannot understand, means that it's hard to read for others to read it or to identify it. So you need to make it clear and easy to read lah. Make it simplify, or maybe divide the figure into two. So make sure you have caption legend in the figure. Do not include table and figure that shows the same information. Okay. So these are tips for the figures. On a 1,000 miles journey, the hardest thing is the first step. So to write a paper, where actually we need to start. So to make it easy, the figures is the easiest way to write lah. So you can start with the figure. So you have a result, you make a figure, and you explain and analyze the figure. So that's how you start your paper writing lah. So it's much easier. But before you write, you need to better to organize the figure to a proper presentation form. Okay. So there are a few tools to create figures. I usually use Sigma plot here. Sigma plot is, I would say, give a nice graph. You can plot 3D, polar, Cartesian. You can choose a lot of different type of graph in Sigma plot. So other than that, you can use Excel or MATLAB. Okay. So this is a common problem for this chapter, result and discussion. Does not know analysis and discussion. Difficult to differentiate the result because of maybe the figure is not properly organized. Many assumption and speculation. So if you want to make an assumption, you need to have a supportive reference, or maybe from other papers, or maybe from your own method. Okay. So for conclusion, you have to restate all your objective and then highlight your research finding, highlight how your research contribute to knowledge, and then if necessary, discuss future consideration and limitation of your current study. So this is if it's necessary. But usually we just state the objective and highlight our findings, highlight what's the contribution to the knowledge, or maybe you can highlight what's the application of your research can be applied to. And then for acknowledgement, you can name those who have assisted the research, funder, institution, contributor lab, also assistance from lab equipment, financial, technical guides. Okay. So for reference is basically a source of information that should be mentioned to strengthen your paper. I prefer you do the reference, you get the reference from reputable journal. Try to avoid conference paper, thesis, or website. So from the same, it's also advisable you include papers from the same journal. It shows that your work can be published in it, and also it is basically helping the publisher to get more citation lah. And the publisher or editor will love it if you cite from the same journal, but not that many lah. So it should be up to date in less than 10 years or more, or less than 5 years, much better. And it should be related to your work. So any paper not cited in the any papers not cited in the paper should not be included. So only put papers in the reference that are being cited in the text. Okay. So why do we need reference? To avoid plagiarism, to enable reader to trace your source, to enable reader to distinguish your idea from someone else, and to support idea and theory. Okay. So before you submitting to the journal, after you finish writing it, you have to do language editing, proofread. You can send it to a company, or maybe you can ask someone, a friend that has good English, and also critiquing. So means that you need to ask your supervisor, co-supervisor, or maybe other lecturers to read your paper and criticize it. So it means that if a lot of people can comment your paper, you can improve the paper a lot more. Okay. So this is some publication ethic. Make sure you present all your data honestly and objectively. There shouldn't be duplicate paper. You send the two papers with same contents to different journals. So it's basically misconduct or plagiarism, copying other works, and it's assembly unethical. So during the submission, some of the journal requires you to send the cover letter. So how you want to write a cover letter to submit to a journal, so you can follow this point here. So first, it should contain corresponding author information, state that paper has been read and approved by all authors, state that what is the financial support, who is it from, grant, state the importance of paper, knowledge contribution, and if necessary, state papers that related to the submission you are going to do. Okay. And then for the review, there are two types of review: blind and double blind review. So most of the journal that I have reviewed is using blind review, where the reviewer knows who is the author of the paper. For double blind review means both reviewer and author will not know who they are. Means the author will not know who the review is, and reviewer also don't know who's the author of the paper. The blind is the reviewer knows who's the author of the paper, but the author does not know who the reviewer is. Okay. And we also have a voluntary peer review and paid review. Mostly is the voluntary peer review. So how we want to respond to the reviewer? I think this is the hardest part, because you want to respond to reviewer comments. So some of the comments might look like stupid or maybe unreasonable, but you have to respond it appropriately. So try to follow these 3 points here. Respond completely. So if the reviewer have four comments, so you need to answer it, all of it. Try to use color highlight on the text you have changed in the paper, and then respond politely. I think this is the main point here. If you want to respond to the reviewer, try to do politely. Basically, the reviewer are critiquing your work, not you. So try to tone your response as polite as possible. Always thank the reviewer. You can start with to answer the comment with thank you for the, for example, thank you for the comments. The answer has been included in the text in paragraph or something like that. Try always to thank the reviewer, even though you are not agreed with the comment. Okay, try to answer it. Some of the reviewers look like they didn't read our paper. They just comment it as if what we already explained it in the paper, but they comment it again. So basically, it's like something like a rude reviewer, but you have to politely respond it to them. Okay, or else it might get rejected. Okay, your paper might get rejected. So respond with evidence. Provide enough data to support your reasoning. Cite published paper, do simulation, calculate to support the agreement. So if the reviewer disagree with your paper, you can support it by doing another simulation or referring to another papers that already did the experiment. Okay. It's either you answer the comment in the comment form, or you can add it inside your text or paper. It's okay. So this is the verdict. Usually there will be reject submission, not recommended after amendment, minor correction, major correction, and accept. There are also journals that only have accept and reject. So reject, there are two types. So if you are rejected with resubmission after amendment, so you can submit back to the journal. If it's not recommended to, if you get this this verdict, so you have to find another journal to submit. So common reason for rejection: does not follow the format specified by the journal, does not fully fulfill the aim and the scope of the journal. So these 2 points here, usually if you send it today, tomorrow it will be rejected because the editor will reject it first. So try to eliminate this rejection reason, okay. And then if it's okay, both of these points is okay, the editor will send to the reviewer. So the reviewer will look at the originality of the work, and if there's a study design flaw, you might you might get rejected. Even poor English also it will be rejected. And please look at the reference. Should be up to date. So if your paper was rejected, what you need to do, you can appeal. Basically, you can write a letter, email, and send it to the editor for appeal. Because sometimes but in my experience, we did send appeal letter because our paper is rejected, but the editor is not accept the appeal. So usually we just make changes to the paper and submit to another journal. So not a good idea, submit to other journal without change, or submit to conference or book chapter. So try not to downgrade your research work. If it's rejected, try to make change from the review comments and submit to another journal. So following acceptance, if it's accepted, production department, they will copy editing and page proof, and then they will send the page proof to you so that you need to check it carefully. And then they also have an advanced online publication using DOI number, Digital Object Identifier. So it's basically an article published ahead of the actual publication date. So tips for fast writings. So how to write fast? First, you need to start with the figures and table. So from the figures and table, you can write the analysis and explain the figures about it. And then try to focus on the idea, ignore spelling or grammatical error. So just write it down without, just put all your idea into the paper, write it down. So after you finish, then you look at the spelling and also the grammatical error. Okay. So writing flow, usually we start with result and discussion from the figures and table, and the experimental is also best start with the figure, for example, or the flowchart or the tables in the experimental chapter. And then conclusion, introduction, and lastly abstract. So after the abstract, you can think the best title for your paper, okay? And for the reference, you need to constantly update it, okay? So when to submit? So open all year round. So for me, I prefer to submit it early of the year or end of the year, around because what we call because early of the year, most of the people are still holiday, so maybe they will send to a review that less expert. An expert means that they might give an acceptance to our paper. And COVID time, maybe it's good to send it in COVID time, during this time, because there's a lot of restriction doing experiment in the lab. So if you have results, try to publish it now. So might be the publisher will accept your paper much easier because it has less competition. Okay. So that's all for me for this sharing discussion. I think I will pass to the MC, Celine, to continue with the session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Huda. I hope you all enjoy this excellent presentation. So from Dr. Huda's sharing, he has briefly explained the benefits of high impact publications, the tips for writing technique for a good manuscript, and also the manuscript acceptance flow. So now Dr. Huda will answer some questions that were sent to us during the presentation. So the first question is regarding the format of the article upon submission. The journal do have their own format or template of publishing the article, but sometimes the template is not provided in their website. Is it required to follow the publisher's template during the first submission of article?
Okay, thank you for the question. So I think it depends on the journal or the publisher itself. If there's no template, uh, I think you can use your own template lah, to send it. I think shouldn't be any problem. But if you want to double check it, it's better for you to email the editor and ask them whether they have a template for the papers or not. Okay.
Okay, so we continue with the next question. Okay. So from Muhammad Ashraf, how do we identify predatory journal? Some Scopus index journals looks legit, but they are actually predatory journals. So maybe Dr. Huda, can you elaborate what is predatory journal and how to check the predatory journal?
Okay, I'm not sure how we can check the predatory journal because they're basically a scammer, right? So it's quite hard to find them. But there's someone put a link here in the chat
Sure.
box, blist.net. Maybe you can try to explore it, because the predatory journal basically they just want to get money from us lah, because we have to pay for publication. So for the Scopus indexing, usually they will give because I'm one of the editor in the UTHM publisher Jaita. So how actually Scopus indexing give index to the journal? Basically, they will evaluate it within 2 years. After first the journal should have what we call macam Jaita contohnya. Kita Jaita ni adalah new journal, so we have to wait 3 years to submit to Scopus for indexing. So they will evaluate us first. Usually it's a bit hard to get the Scopus, but if you get the Scopus journal, dia akan bagi lagi 2 years, dia akan evaluate balik lagi 2 tahun lagi. So within these 2 years pre-evaluation, before they will give full Scopus index. So during that time, publisher boleh dapat duit lah, boleh cari duit lah. Sebab once dia dapat Scopus, dia boleh charge submitter ataupun author mungkin RM1,000 ke RM2,000 untuk publish di jurnal mereka lah. So that's how after that, during that time dia tak akan follow the Scopus regulation lah, takkan usually kita akan limit kita punya paper berapa banyak akan masuk dalam setiap isu. Contohnya kalau sebelum dapat Scopus, maybe first is our issue is single issue maybe 10 paper. Tapi selepas dapat Scopus, kita kena maintain jugalah around 10 ataupun 20 macam itulah. So the predatory journal, what will they do is selepas dia dapat Scopus tu, they will increase in large amount lah. So dia akan terima maybe 100-200 paper setiap issue, because they want to gain money lah. to dapatkan duit. So I think that's one of the way lah how to you can identify predatory journal where you look at the past publishing numbers of paper published in each issue. So sebelum before they get the Scopus index, how many paper they submit, they accept in each issue, and after they got Scopus, how many paper they accept. So if there's a large gap, maybe sebelum Scopus dia ada 10-20, tapi selepas tu dia ambil 200 kan, selepas it might be a predatory journal lah. That's how maybe one of the way lah to identify the predatory journal lah. But I suggest that you try to try to submit papers from WS lah, JCR, not Scopus lah. Scopus pun okay juga. Tapi if you can publish in WS, it's much better. You can get more citation, right? Okay.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Harap menjawab lah sebab saya tak apa-apa. I'm not familiar with the predatory journal lah.
Okay, it's okay, doctor. Thank you for your elaboration. So for the next question. Okay, so what is doctor opinion on several scenarios that there are several researchers just put their name on the paper, but they did not contribute anything for the paper?
Several scenarios that there are several researchers just put their name. It depends who actually put the name in the papers. Is it you or your supervisor? Or usually the names in the papers usually will be put by you and your supervisor lah, because you and your supervisor knows who do the work, right? So if your supervisor put names and you don't, then you might not know who is it. You better discuss with your supervisor lah. It might maybe the names contribute something to your supervisor to help you your supervisor to do the research. Okay.
Okay.
It might directly not contribute to yourself lah, maybe toward the supervisor lah. Okay.
Okay, so I think maybe this scenario happens to someone, so they're curious about it. So okay, so doctor, the next question, can you give some tips on how to write good review paper? I think doctor have explained it in the slide. Is it, doctor?
For review paper, I'm not that familiar with, because I think I publish from 100. From 100, I might co-authored or authored 1 or 2 review paper only, not that many. So it's quite hard to do some to give tips to write a good review paper lah. But what I know, basically, you can use your literature review in your thesis, convert it to review paper, because from there actually you can what we call you can get a lot of information. I can convert it. And the one tips is the review paper topic need to be specific lah. That's one of the main tips lah. So there's no other researcher that publish the review on the topic. So that's one of the main. Okay.
Okay, doctor, thank you. So we have a question from Natasha. She just wanted to know how much is the best numbers of reference needed for a good journal?
A good journal, I think more than 10. So usually there's no, it depends on your literature review. If it depends on the literature review. There's no exact number on it, but usually around 20, more than 10, around 20 should be okay. But it is different if you are doing on review paper. So review paper should be more than 60 or 50 papers inside for review paper. Even it can go up to 100 paper reference paper. Okay, so yeah, I think so. Depends on the literature review.
So maybe some of the supervisor, maybe they have advised the student to read more more paper or article to have more reference. So maybe
Yeah.
for
And also the reference should be I did give some tips that the reference should be related to the research gap lah. So from the 10 years, less than 10 years, you start doing research. So you should cite that paper that contribute or related to the research gap.
okay.
Okay.
So, thank you, Doctor. I hope this
Okay.
answer your question, Natasha. So let's jump to our YouTube viewers from Fikri. So if student want to further study until PhD, so the paper that published during master, is it can be used in PhD? I think he means that can the publication during master, can it achieve for the requirement for PhD?
I don't think so because the year that you publish is different, right? Maybe you start PhD is 2018, you publish your master research in 2017, so it can contribute to your PhD work lah. But if you save it, you save it. Maybe your research in master and PhD is a continuation, a continuing process, and save the result. You register your PhD and then you submit your result during your master. I think it can be counted as your PhD work because it's a continuation work, right? But you have to look at the publication date. Then you can claim. So you start your PhD in 2018. You publish your work, master work 2018. So it should be okay lah for PhD KPI.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.
Okay, so from Siti Aisha, if we decide to publish to closed access journal and someone cite us based on only our abstract, does it count to our total citation?
Okay, so for this, as long as your papers in their reference, so it's count as a citation.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Doctor. So, Doctor, hold on. I try to read the question from the participants. Sometimes some index corpus are also listed in WOS. Is it considered published in WOS?
Can you repeat again?
Sometimes the index corpus are also listed in WOS. Is it considered published in WOS?
The journal is listed in WS, so you send a paper to that journal. Is it? And then is it in WS? Is it like that?
I think what he means is that this journal is index corpus, and then it is listed in WOS.
Okay.
So is it considered published in WOS?
Yes, it is considered published in WS because most of the journals in WS is also indexed in Scopus. So that's why you have to check into the JCR. JCR and see whether the journals that you want to submit your paper is inside the indexing. So there's maybe I can continue on looking at the JCR if there's internet here.
Yeah, sure. Doctor, before you continue to brief about JCR link, there's a Natasha Amira. She raised her hand to ask questions. So,
Okay.
Natasha, can you please ask your question?
Hello. Hello.
Hello,
Yes, we
yes,
can hear
Natasha.
you.
Okay,
Hello.
thank you
Yeah.
for the sharing, doctor. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Any tips from doctor
Okay.
to get published in IEEE? As we know, IEEE is quite difficult to publish, right? And then,
Yes.
actually we need to target certain journal to publish, or we can blast any related journal to publish. That's all.
Okay. So for IEEE journals, it is best. I think most of the journal is in WS. But to double check it, it's better to search in WS indexing website first lah. And then for the tips, I think is right now it's quite tough to to publish in IEEE journals because there's a lot of competitors and for the tips I think you have to have a research gap lah. So it means that there is a breakthrough research, so it might be easier for you to be accepted in one of the journals. And for the IEEE, it has what you call high impact factor, means a lot of people will cite your paper. That's really good. So usually people will send it to IEEE Access, if I'm not mistaken. It is Q1, and the review time is just I think 1 or 2 months, because for me to review IEEE Access, they only to review a paper from IEEE Access, they only give me 7 days to review the paper. It's really difficult for me. Usually, other journal they will give review time up to 1 month, but for this IEEE Access, they only give the review 7 days. So the tips is that you need to have a good research gap, good research to publish in IEEE, and you shouldn't have any design flaw. Okay, for try also to include maybe senior members of IEEE in your authors. It might also help.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, doctor, for
Okay.
the sharing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So, is there any other question from the participants before we end the sharing session?
Let me try to
Yeah.
log into the JCR first. Okay.
Hello, Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
Uh,
Please continue.
how to
Alam.
make our make how to make our elaborate?
Excuse me? It's
Hello?
not clear. Not clear.
Uh,
Tak apa clear lah.
how to
Mr. Sabarudin.
make our
Mr. Sabarudin, I can't. We can't hear you. Maybe there's a problem.
how to make
for your
our
line.
article journal as an attractive to other readers to cite. Okay. Wait.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Hello? Hello?
I think your line is
Hello?
intermittent. Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Not clear.
Huh? Better.
Here, I think you can type your question in the chat box.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Doctor, you may continue with your briefing about JCR.
Okay, okay, let me share the slide. I think internet here is a bit okay. So from the library, you can go to the VPN and go to database. And then you can click the Clarivate Analysis, JCR. So from here, you could identify what journals are indexed in JCR or Web of Science. So you can take, for example, antenna. They will list all the antenna journals that has a keyword antenna in the journal's name. So they have several results. For example, I'll choose this one, antenna, wireless and propagation. You can also type down the ISN of the journal. So it's better for you to check first whether it's in JCR or not, the journal that you're going to submit. Okay. But my internet is a bit slow today.
Never mind, while waiting for the page to load, maybe Doctor can answer question from YouTube viewers. What is a requirement of published paper for PhD in UTM in terms of level and quantity?
What is it? Publish in?
What is the requirement of published paper for PhD in UTHM in terms of level and quantity?
I think UTHM, if I'm not mistaken, 2 Scopus journal, right? For you to graduate, you need to publish 2 Scopus journal, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's better for you to check with the CGS officer. But I think currently they are changing the KPI for the newcomers, for the newly registered student that going to continue master and PhD. I think they going to drop the level to maybe journal from my side is also can be accepted as one of the KPI to graduate.
Okay.
But you have to check back with the CGS about it. Okay.
Okay. So thank you, Doctor. So
I think I have a problem with the internet. I cannot go through the JCR.
cannot go through the JSA. So okay, maybe they can ask for their supervisor or any other friend that have experience to check the JCR. So maybe they can ask from them. So this question is from Mr. Sabarudin.
Okay.
How to attract? I think
How to attract readers to cite our article.
Article review, yeah.
So okay, basically, how to increase our paper citation, is it? And attract readers to cite our paper. So maybe the first thing that you can do is try to put your research in your paper in ResearchGate because usually if you search in Google the topic, some of it you can download it from ResearchGate. So you need to have an account for the ResearchGate to put your papers inside. Other than that, you need to publish in an open access journal. Open access means that everyone can download your paper. Okay. That's how you attract readers to cite papers. And another thing is, of course, the topic of your research. So if the topic of your research is in trend with the in line with the current trend, so maybe you have a high citation, even you publish in a conference or proceeding. Okay.
Okay. Okay, there's another question. If we put our paper in ResearchGate, can we put our paper just like that, or should we use camera ready version?
I'm not sure about this. So is it, or because maybe you submit it to a journals that not an open access? So can we put it in the ResearchGate? So basically, we have to put what we call, it's not a straight away download. You need to the author that want to download the paper need to request from the author itself. It's better like that. So if in the ResearchGate, you can set it out like that. Straight download, or the one that want to download the paper need to request it first. So if it's not an open access paper, so better to set it up like that. Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Doctor. I hope this answer your question, Ms. Aisha Ibrahim. So maybe one last question before we end the sharing session. So I think there's no more question from the participants. So okay, so before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up, Doctor?
I would like to say, I would like to apologize because I cannot share with you how we can look at the rank in JCR, how we can search the journals in the JCR, because the internet at my home is a bit slow today. So I think you can maybe ask the CGS or supervisor on how to check the rank of the journal in JCR. Is quite important because the rank shows the higher rank means the journal has higher impact factor, which means higher citation. So it's best for you to try to submit your paper to Q1 and Q2 journals, even though you think that your paper is not good enough, but the feedback from the review from Q1 and Q2 journal is very good. For me, you can actually use that feedback from the reviewer to improve your thesis and also to improve your paper, and you can submit to another journal after you improve it. Okay, I think that's all. I hope that everyone can gain some insight on what I discuss, share in this session. I hope that is useful for your journey in master and PhD study. I think that's all for me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doctor. So due to limited time, we could not continue the Q&A session. But if there any other, further explanation needed, you may directly contact or email Dr. Huda for assistance. So thank you once more for answering the question and for the informative presentation. I believe what Dr. Huda shared will be beneficial to our present and future. It was a pleasure having you here with us, Dr. Huda. So a webinar is not complete without a photography session. Now everyone, please turn on your camera and give a big smile.
Slow.
Okay, so everyone ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, next page. 1, 2, 3. So the next page. 1, 2, 3.